Forgery, disguise, mistaken identity. The art world is full of mystery.
And as we found, not every painting is quite as it seems.
Can't we use that trick that you use in the gallery, Philip, where you just get a cotton wool and a bit of spit and have a go at some of this? Can't we do that now?
No. My name is Philip Mould. I have a gallery in the West End of London. I specialise in British portraits, British paintings, old masters, I suppose, would be another term for the majority of my works. And I also broadcast and write on the subject of art, on the subject of fakes, and on the subject of making discoveries.
International art dealer Philip Mould knows the risks. He hunts down sleepers, paintings that hide secrets.
In the past we looked at pictures. Now almost you can look through them. Paint almost acts like blood at a crime scene. Generally speaking, every dealer has their own style of stock label on the back of their pictures. Now, we know that David's picture is most likely to have come from Georges Petit. So what I'm going to do now is go around all the pictures in this collection that we know have gone through the Georges Petit gallery. I found one. Definitely the same design, same coloured ink, serrated edge. We're in business. Back in Paris, I'm heading to a research lab which is undertaking pioneering work in the field of art authentication. The team working in the lab behind me are at the absolute forefront of a whole new way of looking at art. I mean, there's a lot of speculation in the art world generally about how science is able to take the process of attribution forward. And these guys have got techniques and machinery and technology which are really pushing the boundaries. Finding this almost absurd. They asked for two things: proof that it was in existence before Monet's death, and secondly, that it was in the Khalil collection. We have found both of those bits of evidence.
Absolutely. It left one kind of speechless, startled, shocked, upset.
This is an incredibly exciting moment. Inside this box could lie the evidence that will decide whether Keith's picture is genuine or not. This is so thrilling. It's like opening the doors of a tomb. Time to put Henrietta Maria under the knife. OK, this really is the moment of truth now, so we're going to be taking off that rock-hard 18th century paint. Now, this is the picture I wanted to show you.
I used to have a postcard of this.
Did you?
On my wall when I was a student, yeah.
I imagine it would probably look rather good. Even in reproduction, this picture works. It's called Impression, Sunrise. And this is where Impressionism gets its name. I can really see why David bought this picture. He believes in it. And I have to say, the more time I've spent with it, I believe in it. I think it's worth asking, why is it such a successful work of art? Using something that has a deep resonance in our culture, Anthony Gormley has given it basically a makeover. He's called it Angel of the North. That immediately makes it quite terse and modern. So now we come to the subject of valuation. And how do you value something like this? I would comfortably value it at £1 million. I mean, it's a sensual experience that only someone who's actually seen it and loves it can impart, providing, of course, they can paint, and boy, he can paint. When Tony was faking Chagall's work, he spent hours practicing one key element, the signature. Chagall would change the way he signed his name, depending on the type of work he was up to. So what does Tony make of the signature on Martin's painting? God, you know how to ruin my fun, don't you? I mean, that's the really difficult bit, and that's the bit I'm genuinely extremely worried about.
Can't you just slow down a bit? Come on, keep up. Turner would have painted this in a hurry. We can't hang around.
You're destroying my shoot.
Yeah, I think next time you need to come, perhaps not in a suit.
And today I'm visiting the garden of a long-term hero of mine, and I'm intrigued to see how he combines his own love of art and of plants of all types in his garden.
I mean, we're no nearer knowing whether Martin's picture is real or a fake, but what it has shown, in a rather worrying way, is just how easy it is to fake a Chagall. I mean, Tony, makes it look like karaoke. He just stands up there and gets into the zone, into the spirit of the artist. Now, obviously, he's proficient. He knows exactly how to paint and how to draw. But it makes you think. Drawing, my two passions come together: British wildflowers and art. Now, don't tell me you picked it up at a car boot sale.
You must be psychic, Philip.
God, why didn't I ever go to these car boot sales? So what did you pay for it?
£3.50.
£3.50.
Yes.
Right. OK. Well, I can tell you that this is an original. I've had a look at it. I've had a look at it with a magnifying glass in the daylight. And it is worth, I would say, probably £1,100 or £1,200.
Well, there again, you can see it. A tower, which is in fact a lighthouse. I give you the lighthouse. And there on the left, the clock tower. This is the view that Turner encountered. It's such a chic and genuinely beautiful object. I mean, you can just imagine it there, can't you, in the cafe, the sort of the height of Parisian fashion. You can see how it would catch the eye, and you can see how it would also set the atmosphere. I know you think I'm just putting a brave face on this, but for me, at least, an unfinished picture that shows you the artist's process, that gives you a sort of, glimpse into the mind of a great figure like Van Dyck, if it is by Van Dyck, is, to my mind, more interesting and in another way more appealing, particularly to a sort of sophisticated 21st century audience who actually likes to know how artists work.
Oh, Philip, come on. I mean, if you had the choice between it being finished and perfect and by Van Dyck, or being a, half finished version, I mean, obviously you'd go for the finished version, of course you would.
I'm feeling quite vulnerable, actually, to tell you the truth. And if I do get it wrong, in a very provable way, well, it doesn't do my reputation much good, and I rather sort of pride myself, at least sometimes, in getting it right. Because if you get up close to a Lowry, you see a different type of artist. I mean, he uses nails, he scratches, he uses the back of his brush. In fact, if you X-ray them, his paintings look like war zones. There is one pigment that we just don't want to find in Patrick's picture: titanium white. Only in use a year after Degas' death in 1917, its presence would prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the painting is a fake. Like all speculations at that stage, we couldn't be sure. And I gave Bendor an amount to bid on.
What I think he doesn't know is that I was particularly excited about this picture and I was going to go some way ahead of what we'd agreed.
£7,000 on the telephone and selling. At £7,000, last chance, 7,000 and selling.
Now, look, have a look at this. So early on, Gainsborough absolutely cracks nature. He knows how to portray it as far as he needs. And then as he gets older, his imagination begins to take over. But it was not completely his imagination. He needed props to make it all work for him. So he would get something like, for example, this. A piece of broccoli. What you need to do with a piece of broccoli is just rip away a few of the leaves, or a few of the parts.
The florets, I think, is the technical
term.
term.
That's the technical term. And look, already, from a distance, that's beginning to look like a tree. Agreed?
Yes.
He would then use the rock behind, so the rock becomes basically a sort of mountainous outcrop. A tree against it like that, and then, why are you eating it?
I like it.
On the left-hand side, you've got darkness. On the right-hand side, you've got billowing light. A typical English day, a summer's day, which could go either way. I mean, this is what gives so much authenticity to Constable. He has turned a cottage with a cart into something that can compete with the great works of the Renaissance. According to Patrick's invoice, we should be able to trace his painting right back to the moment it left Degas' studio. It's a tantalising prospect, but all I've got to go on are two names, Goupil and Heilbert. Such a beautiful image, isn't it? I mean, regardless of anything else, that dirt, that varnish was obscuring so much that one just couldn't even see, and couldn't even feel.
Nous avons le plaisir, we have the pleasure to confirm to you that the painting described below, which you have submitted for our appreciation, is an authentic
That's fantastic!
I don't believe it.
We've done it! We've done it! When first discovered, sky, sea and foreground were completely covered with a forger's conception of a constable. In other words, someone had already touched it up
with sinister intent. To be sure that there are no suspicious pigments in Patrick's picture, I've come to University College London to meet Kathleen Froyen, an art historian with a high-tech gadget that wouldn't look out of place in a James Bond film.
Anyway, we are joined now by Fiona's co-host on Fake or Fortune, art expert Philip Mould. Welcome, Philip. Nice to see you again.
Very good to see you again.
So you're on the 4th series. Now, you must be inundated with people thinking, this thing I have on my wall might be worth an absolute bomb. Because, I mean, it was so popular. So have you had lots of requests
We
this
have.
time?
I mean, since the last series, we've had at least 2,000 emails. But I've been looking at it, and we need to do tests. This doesn't feel like a painting that has begun with one hand and then finished with another. You can always tell that. There's a sort of feeling of a Chinese whisper. It starts in one way and then sort of oddly changes as your eye passes over the surface.
Wow. Gosh.
Isn't it incredible? This expresses in one great statement just what Van Dyck brought to England. How he just transformed the whole way we see ourselves. Our journey starts back at the Courtauld Institute, the home of imaginary landscape. For years it was thought to be by Gainsborough, but then 20 years ago it was stripped of its attribution. And since then has been languishing as a late follower of Gainsborough. In other words, by someone who copied him, maybe as much as a century later. But look at the stakes here. I mean, we have the opportunity, possibly, to get to the greatest artist at work in England in the 17th century, Sir Anthony Van Dyck. I mean, not just England, but Europe. In this case, it's a risk worth taking. There is a chilling aspect to all of this. If they find in these paintings a compound, a chemical that wasn't around, that wasn't invented during Turner's lifetime, then the attribution of these pictures to Turner is dead in the water. I mean, prosperity, obviously, traditionally, is to do with money. And, of course, there is a big element of money in prosperity. But it's also to do, and surely dominantly to do, with happiness. And happiness, I think, probably for me, in a rather sort of literal art-dealing sense, takes two forms. The first is to live with beautiful objects. For me, great art takes you to a more spiritual zone or realm. But you can't have protein without your greens. And the other thing that I adore is nature. So for me, prosperity, being happiness, can be defined as the fusion of wonderful looking objects by great artists and nature at its most spontaneously beautiful. I mean, you hear about it. It's one of those things, you know that it exists in the art world, the power of certain individuals, particularly if you're contracted to them, to be able to destroy a picture. But the reality is it's so rare. I mean, I've never known it personally. I don't know any colleagues of mine who've encountered this. If acrylic paint is present, it will dissolve when rubbed with a solvent called a xylene, and we'll see paint on the swab. Okay, Fraser, so we just, really don't want this to dissolve. Yeah, but I mean, in art world terms, that's like a car without the engine. I mean, you've got to have the paperwork to go with it.
Philip has agreed that the painting will be displayed here, where experts and the public can judge it for themselves.
Well, what do you think of this? Henrietta Maria coming to hang in the palace where she spent so much time as a queen.
I mean, who'd have thought it when you first set eyes on it all those months ago?
I don't think there aren't many other pictures out there waiting to be found.